Welcome to ESPN Classics Battlelines. I'm Rich Eisen. As the 1980s came to a close, Iron Mike Tyson's future looked limitless. 37 consecutive terrified and overmatched opponents had fallen before him. Then, on February 10th, 1990, Tyson squared off against James Buster Douglas. Though immensely talented, Buster was mostly known for his reluctance in the ring. Most bookmakers didn't even bother to take bets on the fight. But what happened that night, as we shall see over the next hour, would shock the world and irreversibly alter the destinies of both men.
Hit him, Mike, hit him!
This man was a killer. He came in to destroy you, and you knew it.
And the bell rang, and he banged his gloves together, and all you could see were his eyes, and they were ferocious, and he ran across the ring.
You know, you're in trouble the minute that he's stepping in. His skill and his execution was like thunder.
Oh, what a left hand!
Kid Dynamite. He hits you like a stick of dynamite and your head blows off.
Oh, what a shot!
He was a guy without pity. He did not give a shit about the guy he was fighting. Nothing. He would destroy an opponent.
He was dynamic, savage, ferocious. Mike Tyson wanted to kill people.
Mike Tyson was willing to die in that ring. So you've got to be prepared to do the same, because Mike Tyson is one bad mother.
He's a scary son of a bitch. Plain and simple.
Daring to challenge Tyson was James Buster Douglas, an obscure fighter with a decidedly unflattering reputation.
Nobody thought Buster was any kind of opponent at all. He had a reputation as a quitter, as a guy who wouldn't train, as a guy who was going to cave after Mike hit him on the chin with a punch.
But a right hand catches Mike Tyson. An uppercut catches Tyson.
It was a joke. People couldn't remember if his name was Bubba or Buster. Nobody was paying attention to this guy.
Tyson down again.
When I would say that James Douglas was great, he had the potential to be a great fighter, they could say you're fucking crazy.
For the first time I've seen Mike Tyson staggered.
One sports book in Vegas, one, puts this fight up 42-1 and gets no action.
Buster Douglas has brought it up from the depths of courage.
The odds should have been 100-1, 1,000-1. How can you lick Mike Tyson?
What an uppercut by Douglas, and down goes Tyson.
When he hit him with the uppercut, I swear to God, I thought he ripped his head off.
Mike Tyson was falling. Sports writers were standing, wanting to get a better look at what they knew was history.
I thought he was going to get up. I did. But then when I seen him looking around for the mouthpiece, I knew it was over then.
Say it now, gentlemen. James Buster Douglas, undisputed heavyweight champion of the world.
It was the greatest upset in boxing history, if not in sports history.
The upset was so staggering because Tyson's fury had made him seem bulletproof. That fury can be traced back to a childhood seemingly defined by brutality on the mean streets of New York.
Things started going wrong for Mike when he was born in the blood hole belly of Brownsville and didn't know his father.
His dad left when his mother was pregnant with Mike, and his mother was just kind of outmatched by the world. She believed in God, and Michael saw a world where there couldn't be a God.
His nickname was Bummy because he had such torn and tattered clothes, and people picked on him.
Mike, he was a kid who hung around girls a lot, and he developed a list and began kind of talking like a gal. And he got abused by boys, beat up, and he never fought back.
Tyson is a kid. He loves pigeons. That's one place where he can have some kind of love in his life, and he collects them. Then one day, a kid took one of his pigeons and just ripped the head off the pigeon. To see that happen to one of his babies, he called his pigeons his babies. Finally, it turned in Mike, and it's the first time he ever fought back. And he beat the hell out of the kid.
He found out when he hit people, they stayed hit. And they fell asleep for, minutes on end. And he suddenly said, I'm not going to take this stuff anymore. I'm just going to fight back.
And that's when Mike turned from the victim to the executioner.
Brownsville.
He talked quite frankly about becoming a gangster. He was like the designated fighter at one point and then the leader of the Jolly Stompers, which was a Brownsville gang.
I know stories of Mike rolling with these guys who were 5 to 6 years older and just, you know, beating people up and robbing people.
He started to hang out at the supermarket and put on a nice smile and offer to carry some old ladies' packages back to the projects.
He'd help them, and then he'd freaking knock their teeth out, 60-year-old women, when the elevator door closed.
By the time Mike Tyson was 11 years old, he was well on his way to becoming a hardened criminal.
He had 38 arrests as a juvenile. He had been in Spofford House. He was released and then got arrested again, and he was sent to a Tryon Reformatory, which is not too far from Catskill.
It was at Tryon where Mike Tyson began the journey that brought him fame, fortune, and eventually to Tokyo, and his fateful fight with Buster Douglas. In 1979, while incarcerated at Tryon, a facility in upstate New York for juvenile delinquents, Mike Tyson met a guard named Bobby Stewart.
First time he saw Mike, he was chained to a radiator because he was incorrigible. He ends up fighting up at Tryon for this guy Stewart. Stewart calls Cus D'Amato and says, "Hey, I got somebody here you're not going to believe."
There was only one Cus D'Amato. I mean, he was, in my opinion, he was the smartest man that boxing ever produced.
Cus watches him fight and thinks to himself, this is the next heavyweight champion of the world.
He had that innate Dempsey-like aggression. He wanted to maim you with every punch, and his hand speed for a heavyweight is just astonishing. You can see that this kid could become another Dempsey, another Marciano, that it was all there in the raw as a teenager.
Cus adopts him, becomes his official guardian, and taught him how to bob and move, gave him that old psychological stuff that Cus was so good at.
Cus was like a father to Mike. He had to build up his character and his confidence to motivate Mike and to show Mike that he could become somebody.
They would sit at night and watch these old black and white films of the old great boxers, and they became Mike's gods as a teenager.
He studied Jack Johnson's gold tooth and Stanley Ketchell's swagger and Jack Dempsey's scowl.
Everything that Cus D'Amato did was about Mike and was about making Mike the youngest heavyweight champion ever. That was Cus's holy grail.
Cus gave him an image of a future, gave him an image of himself. It was a great storyline with Tyson and Cus D'Amato, the kid and the old guy. It was like a Hollywood movie, and we were all prepared to buy into the fantasy. I don't think any of us saw how damaged he was emotionally and psychologically.
One man saw beyond the fairy tale, saw the looming danger. He was Tyson's first trainer.
Tyson had been doing certain things in school. He had been thrown out of school, suspended for getting confrontational with teachers, getting physical with other people.
Teddy Atlas, when I throw Mike out of the gym, send him home, you know, just punish him. But Cus would make excuses for Mike and say, no, he's special.
The rolling thunder that Atlas had always sensed in the distance finally turned to lightning.
I came home, and my wife was in the kitchen with her sisters, and they were crying. And found out that Tyson had grabbed an 11-year-old sister and had tried to force himself on her. I had to get a hold of him. I went to the gym, and a cab pulled up, and Tyson was getting out of it. And then I put the gun to his head and said, that you ever do something, put your hands on somebody in my family again, you better be sure of one thing. I'm going to kill you.
That was Atlas's last act as Tyson's trainer. Cus D'Amato replaced him with Kevin Rooney. Mike Tyson's training continued uninterrupted.
One of the great failures of Cus D'Amato was that he did not side with Teddy Atlas. He sided with Mike Tyson and fired Teddy Atlas. Tyson came to believe that the rules will be bent for him as long as he knocked people out.
Cus was an obsessive personality, and his obsession was to get a championship. And he sent away Teddy rather than Mike because, A, he knew he couldn't con Teddy. B, Tyson was the ticket.
In 1985, that ticket began to pay dividends as D'Amato unleashed Mike Tyson on the heavyweight division and an astonished boxing public.
I once interviewed a guy named Hector Mercedes, a guy he knocked out in his first professional fight. And I said, well, what's it like to fight Mike Tyson? And he says, man, he fights like you stole something from him.
I saw him at this stage. He was flattening everybody, and they were all ended up supine and being carried out on their shields. And here's this guy walking around with these black trunks and black shoes and looking like something who had emerged out of the primordial ooze.
That was the swiftest ascent and the most frightening image that was ever unleashed on an American sporting public. Just the rawest, most elemental, scariest vision poured through your TV set. You couldn't take your eyes off of it.
But just as his growing string of knockouts brought him closer to a shot at the title, Mike Tyson was stunned by yet another life-altering trauma. Cus D'Amato, the man who had saved him, taught him, and protected him, was dead.
He was crushed. He did love Cus.
I go to the funeral, and Tyson is like a very sort of disquieted beast. Cus had built him a pigeon house, and he gets up on the pigeon house, and he's got all his pigeons flying him around him and setting him out into the sky, and he's framed against the sky like some chiseled piece of black stone.
In the blue corner, he is the challenger, Mike Tyson.
A year after D'Amato's death, 20-year-old Mike Tyson stood on the verge of fulfilling their dream, winning the heavyweight title.
About a week before the Berbick fight, I asked Mike, what do you think Cus would say about this guy? And Mike stopped for a second. He'd say, probably say he was a tomato can.
In the second round of that fight, he hit him with a combination, the best of which was a short right hand right on the jaw. Berbick went down flat on his back.
Berbick is down.
It's the only fight I ever covered where one guy got knocked down 3 times by the same punch.
This one is going to be over, I believe. It's over. That's all, and we have a new era in boxing.
When he won the heavyweight championship and he took a bottle of champagne and poured it on Cus's grave, once Cus was gone, you can't underestimate what that did to Tyson's life. It was just back to the kid with no rules, the lost kid again.
Robbed of Cus D'Amato's guidance and confused by a society that now rewarded him for acts of violence for which it once punished him, Mike returned to the places and habits of his youth.
One of his friends told me a story about when he was already a prominent fighter, and he went back to Brooklyn and participated with this guy in a mugging in an elevator in the housing project there. It wasn't for money. It had to be just for kicks.
Tyson's outlaw image resonated with a new generation of alienated urban youth, hungry for a symbol of their rage.
That was a tremendous left hand.
He was actually physically that thing that hip-hop talked about. Hip-hop was about angry black guys, lyrics of fury, face in your face. Mike took all of those metaphors and made them real.
Mike Tyson's coming out like, welcome to the Terror Dome, you're coming into my house. And I will skillfully tear you down, because second one, when I walk into the arena, it's on.
I watched him that night in Atlantic City against Michael Spinks. And Michael Spinks looked across the ring and didn't want to fight.
Oh, the shot landed inside, and Spinks went down.
Michael Spinks was so terrified, he did everything but wet his pants.
And he's down again and in serious trouble.
He's not going to make it. It's all over.
I thought that we were seeing the next great heavyweight champion of all time.
But that night, Mike Tyson lost the last member of the team of men that took him from prison to prominence.
That was the last night that Kevin Rooney was his trainer. Rooney used to kiss him goodbye. That was the last time. That was the last kiss goodbye. The decline was pretty rapid after that.
As soon as he went with Don King, everything started going downhill. Once he got rid of me, once Don King got me moved out of the picture, he had nobody he could trust.
All of a sudden, he's with Robin Givens and Don King, and you look at him, and his fighting style has changed. He has stopped being the scientific fighter that Cus D'Amato raised and that Kevin Rooney honed. He has become a headhunter, and that set him up for Buster Douglas.
James Douglas was born on April 7, 1960 in Columbus, Ohio, where his mother, Lula Pearl, worked part-time as a cook and full-time at pampering her oldest son.
Buster was the baby, the firstborn. He was the world. He was everything.
Yeah, she spoiled me. I had my share of, whatever, doing as I please, when I please.
If his mother was silk, Douglas's father was sandpaper. Billy Dynamite Douglas supported his family with a steady job in an auto parts factory, but his consuming passion was boxing.
I would never have thought that I would become a professional fighter by just observing the way he lived and how he went at it, because he was very, very intense.
There was one fight in Philly where he beat a guy and came back into the locker room and just fought 3 more rounds of shadowboxing after fighting this war. The trainer told Buster just to stand back and get out of his way. So Buster stood there in the shadows watching his dad go to war with a ghost for 3 more rounds in the locker room after he'd gone to war in the ring.
Billy Douglas was the toughest man I ever met in my life. And I met some tough guys, but he was by far the toughest.
That became a standard that he could never live up to, but always part of him was trying to. He'd romanticize his father as this warrior, and he'd stand in front of the mirror and he'd try to make himself look tougher. He'd put Band-Aids over both of his eyes to try to duplicate that look that his father would have after these wars.
At age 10, desperate to win his respect and attention, Buster badgered his father into taking him to the neighborhood recreation center.
It was a tough part of town, East Side, some of the tough people over there, and he brought me in there, because I was just on him about it.
Buster had things his dad didn't. Buster could move. Buster had quicker hands, quicker jab.
Dynamite Douglas saw his son's potential and drove him mercilessly.
He would just be on the side shouting out instructions and stuff. He was so intense, man, that I couldn't really handle it. It was really intense.
As Buster climbed the amateur ranks, Dynamite drove him to tournaments. And as day faded into night, he told his son stories of past ring glories.
He would be talking about his experiences and his travels and adventures and his fights and how he fought and what would happen during the course of a fight.
Buster would just sit there in the dark listening to his dad in the car, kind of drinking it in and stealing from his dad that warrior spirit. And it was as close as I think as he ever felt to love for his dad.
At 15, with Dynamite spurring him on, Buster won his first title.
Won the Golden Gloves. That was a treat. I won it, we fought at the St. John's Arena. The way they had it set up for us, was pretty awesome.
But Buster's lack of passion for the sport infuriated his father, who craved the rituals of the ring.
He never liked boxing at all. It was only to get close to his daddy. It was the only reason he ever became a boxer. He never liked it.
At Lyndon McKinley High, Buster escaped his father's insistent demands by playing forward on the basketball team.
Buster stood out because he was stronger, more physical type of a player than probably 99.9% of the other fellows that we had.
Being in an arena where you had teammates and somebody else to lean on and the whole world didn't rest on your shoulders was a more comfortable place for Buster than the loneliness of a boxing ring.
His junior year, the Panthers went undefeated and played their hated rivals for the state championship.
The thing that I remember most about that was our instructions, the coach's instructions before we came out.
We probably were talking about wiping our on those purple jerseys than running them out of the gym.
And man, that just set everybody on the rafters, man. We walked out of that locker room, boy. There was no turning back. We were not to be denied.
Pursuing his hoop dreams, Buster attended a series of small colleges. But by 1981, it became clear that any real athletic glory would be found in the ring.
I gave my dad a call and told him that I wanted to get back in there and try it.
He calls his father and says, "Can you train me? I want to be a champion." And so this uneasy alliance began.
With Dynamite back in charge, Buster launched his pro career. There were never any questions about his size, speed, and skill. However, there were plenty about his focus, conditioning, and desire.
A Hamlet in boxing shorts. Could I, should I, would I? Can I, will I, do I?
And I had the ability, had the tools to get by. It was just my mental focus wouldn't be there.
He gave up fights to Mike White. He gave up a fight to Jesse Ferguson. What kind of heart did he have?
It was so frustrating for Dynamite to see a kid with all this talent just skate through rounds and just go into automatic pilot and just float.
Tony Tucker, he fights for the IBF heavyweight title. After 8 rounds, it's even. 9th round, Douglas wins.
God, he was boxing the guy's ears off, you know. He looked tremendous, and then all of a sudden, you know, he just said, that's it.
It was almost like he was inflicting that on his father.
Tucker won and was the IBF champion. Afterwards, his father, Billy Dynamite Douglas, who never ran out on anything, sort of threw up his hands and gave up on his own son.
Freed of the weight of his dad's expectations, Buster went on a 6-fight winning streak, ensuring a shot at Mike Tyson. Suddenly, a new man began to emerge, ready, at last, to reach for his potential.
We added things like him lifting weights, and we changed his running program.
Everything I asked him to do, he did, and never complained about nothing.
I'm on point. I'm working hard, man, and just doing everything I'm supposed to be doing.
It was a whole new world. He was a whole new person.
James Buster Douglas had finally gotten himself in fantastic shape. He was finally the jewel that everyone thought was there.
But just weeks before the fight, Buster was rocked by a devastating event. His mother, Lula Pearl Douglas, died of a sudden, massive stroke.
All he ever talked about was what he was going to do for his mom. That's all he ever said. It speaks for itself. She was his world.
I can't imagine that. Losing your mother a few weeks before you have to fight Mike Tyson.
A guy who didn't really ever want to fight now had the perfect excuse not to fight. He could have called that fight off and no one would have really questioned him.
I asked him at that point in time, you know, did he want me to cancel the fight? And he said no. You know, his mom would have wanted him to go on and fight.
She meant everything to me. I always wanted to please her. So we just continued on.
Some 3 weeks before the fight, Mike Tyson and his new handlers arrived in Tokyo to prepare to defend his title against Buster Douglas.
Tyson, who's just fired Kevin Rooney, goes over with his entourage. They're having a wonderful time. They're drinking and cavorting and everything else.
I heard he was jetting back and forth to America to go to the China Club or something. He didn't consider Douglas for a second.
He wasn't alone. As fight night approached, the odds against Buster Douglas were an astronomical 42-1.
This is a time when everybody in the world, everybody, thought Mike Tyson was the toughest guy on the planet, indestructible, could not lose.
I thought he was going to destroy Buster Douglas. I didn't think he was going to lose a fight for like years.
I remember King saying, it ain't about if he knocks a guy out, it's about how he knocks a guy out. And the whole entertainment value was Tyson dismantling people in one fashion or another. And so Douglas was strictly meant as a showcase of Tyson's vicious skill, nothing more.
But on fight night, a quiet storm was brewing in Buster Douglas's locker room.
Buster was relaxed, you know, got him in, warmed him up a little bit, wrapped his hands, warmed him up again. You know, he was ready to go. I saw no fear in that man, none.
We were happy on the way to the ring. We were jumping up and down. We were saying, yes, it's our time. Just bring his ass on out of there, you know.
Here's Tyson, you know, for him it's a stop on the way to the airport. For Buster, because of what's occurred with his mother, what's been building with his dad, it's his torrent about to be unleashed.
It's round one, the heavyweight championship of the world from Tokyo.
I told James, Tyson was a bully of the schoolyard. You know, if he comes up to you, the best thing to do is just haul off and slap him. You know what I mean? Get his respect right then, because if you don't, he's going to bother you the whole school year.
So Douglas is trying to establish himself here, showing no fear.
We bullied him first. All we did was what Tyson was going to do to us, we just did it first.
Good shot landed by Buster Douglas, and the champion gets nailed again.
Tyson had a bad habit of forearming him. That said, if he does that to you, you hit him right back. Don't wait nothing. Tyson hit him with a forearm, and Buster fouled him right back. Tyson stopped it.
And so far, Buster Douglas has not been intimidated by Mike Tyson.
When an intimidator fails to intimidate, he becomes intimidator.
Oh, wild right hand catches Tyson. Tyson.
What Buster Douglas did that night was beautiful.
With Mike Tyson, he's going to continue.
He would wait till Mike would plant his feet, pop him twice with the left jab, move back out of range, and throw the right. So that Mike Tyson, normally the hitter, has become the hittee.
Mike just was not technically equipped to defend himself against the things that Buster was doing.
But a right hand catches Mike Tyson.
And I was hitting him with big shots, early on in the fight. The first 4 or 5 rounds, he was catching shots.
An uppercut catches Tyson. Another right hand. Tyson's been hit about 5 or 6 times.
He outsmarted him. He outthought him. He gave him angles. He boxed him perfectly. He hurt him. He chopped him down.
Tremendous. Oh, a good right hand. A left hand catches Mike.
When Mike got into trouble, he had guys that had no boxing background working his corner. There was nobody there to give him good advice or good counsel, like a Customato or a Kevin Rooney, and then he was lost.
They're trying to treat Tyson's swollen eyes with what appeared to be a prophylactic filled with ice.
That is not ice. That's tap water. It was pathetic. Just total incompetence.
After 6 rounds, what had presumed to be a ritualized slaughter was taking on the dimensions of one of the greatest upsets in the history of boxing.
You sat there and you just, where did I go wrong in my thinking? What fight am I watching? This wasn't supposed to happen.
And they continue to fight after the bell, as Buster Douglas is showing no intimidation by the champion.
Want to make your car look like new again? Well, now you can.
As the fight passed the halfway point, the unthinkable was becoming the plausible.
You at ringside thought that Buster Douglas would make it this far. He has made it with a dominant showing.
After the 5th and 6th, man, my guy was hammering him. Hammering. I don't know what kept Mike up.
Well, there's just no question which is the more confident fighter now. You see how easily Douglas is dominating the action inside.
In the 8th round, he hurt Tyson, hurt him badly. You could see Tyson staggering backwards. And as Tyson's caught up in the ropes, he somehow throws an uppercut from the 2nd row.
Oh, a right uppercut puts the challenger down.
The most interesting psychological dynamic of the fight happened at that very moment. Because James knew he had taken Mike Tyson's best shot, and he was still awake.
You could see his frustration. Not hurt, but frustration at being down as he pounds the canvas, aggravated with himself that he allowed this to happen.
I was hurt. It was a good shot. It knocked me down. But I was still focused.
He's back up on his feet. All right, the bell ends, and it's a good thing for Buster Douglas.
That might have been the best thing that happened to him, because now you knew he wasn't going to quit, as he had in other fights.
Let's see what Douglas has when he comes out for this round.
The first thing I said to him at the end of the 8th round when he got knocked down was, he's going to come like hell.
Well, here's Tyson, a ball of fire now.
The 9th round begins almost as the 8th round in Mike's mind's eye had ended. This was his chance.
The 9th round was one of the great rounds of heavyweight boxing of all time. Mike Tyson came out with the intent of ending it. James knew what was coming. James fended him off. Bam, came right back at him middle of the round.
He's picking apart Tyson, who has come out, charging out of the gate as an angry bull. And by the end of the round, he's being beaten on like a cowbell.
Good shot! Tyson staggered!
Right back to work. Started punching again. Letting them hands go. Billy Douglas let them hands go.
For the first time, it seems Mike Tyson staggered. Both guys trying to fight their hearts out. Tyson nailed again. Buster Douglas has really brought it up from the depths of courage.
By the end of the round, Mike Tyson was on his heels.
Tyson getting hit like we've never seen it before. Surprising after Douglas went down.
It was an incredible physical battle between two great heavyweight fighters.
The bell ends the 9th round.
Buster Douglas is laying a whooping on him. And you knew, really, somehow, that the end was coming.
As the 10th round began, it was clear that the momentum of the 9th round carried over. Buster was still totally in control.
I was in the zone, man. I was in that zone. It was just my time to shine.
Tyson nailed! There goes Tyson! What a shock! Can Mike get up? The count is up to 3. and 4 and 5. Tyson, we never expect to see this. Does he know where he is? It's all over. We have a new heavyweight champion. The biggest upset in the history of boxing.
I've never seen a guy get hit like that. If Mike Tyson didn't have a huge neck, he'd have ripped his head off.
Tyson goes down. Wonder of wonders. Upset of upset. He's down.
You looked at Mike Tyson as being invincible. And to see Buster Douglas beat him, it's crazy.
James Buster Douglas, the new heavyweight champion of the world.
I thought the earth had stopped spinning. I thought the cause and effect had been turned upside down. The laws of physics were broken. I couldn't believe it.
Listen to the crowd. What a shocking surprise.
This was undoubtedly the greatest upset in the history of boxing. But Buster was ready. His mother had died. He wanted to, in some way, dedicate the fight to her.
Why did you win this fight that nobody on the planet gave you?
His mother.
In what way?
God bless her heart.
Yeah. Let him go, Larry.
We was finally able to pay homage. You know, because I had to keep that all in all that time, man.
Yeah. James Buster Douglas took Mike Tyson's title that night. But in the eyes of the boxing world, he took something more.
Maybe the most poignant shot I've ever seen of a fighter on the canvas. Mike groping for the mouthpiece. Groping, in a sense, for the lost identity of Mike Tyson.
He had lost that thing which frightened everybody the most when they got in the ring with him, his aura of invincibility.
Once Tyson's invincibility was shattered, like Humpty Dumpty, all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put them back together again.
From Tokyo, he was hailed as a new American hero.
He comes back. Everybody's curious to learn, you know, who is this guy? We found out real quick. He's in every magazine. He's on the late-night talk shows.
That was cool. I really enjoyed that. You know, going to do the talk shows and stuff.
It was sort of sweet because he was taking it all in stride and seemed to be enjoying it. And I remember going back to Columbus where they had a little parade for him. It was cold, it was gray, and everyone brought out these flowers for him. And it was very sweet.
In the meantime, there were negotiations going on for the next fight. And big money was being tossed about.
Wined and dined by billionaire hotel owner Steve Wynn, Buster Douglas accepted an offer of $24 million to fight Evander Holyfield in Las Vegas on October 25th, 1990.
The future looks great. He's the heavyweight champion. He's going to be a multimillionaire. He's going to be big forever.
But rumors began to swirl that Buster was being less than enthusiastic training for the bout.
Buster's preparation was somewhat short of diligent. You knew he was in trouble when he would be ordering out for pizza from the sparring ring. He just didn't seem to care.
James is one of the nice men you're ever going to meet in your life. But James also was the kind of guy who was like water. He took the path of least resistance.
The weight for James Buster Douglas is 246.
When he weighed in the day before the fight, 12 pounds heavier than he had weighed against Tyson, sort of looking like a poster boy for Save the Whales, there was a stampede out of the weigh-in room by writers. Not to file deadline stories, but to get their bets down at the windows.
He didn't want to fight Holyfield. He didn't want to fight anybody. He wouldn't have fought me.
It just didn't feel right. It was just the last place I wanted to be. It's in the ring.
He's got to face this man, and this guy wants to kick his ass. Right before the bell rings, he's whispering to himself, "Help me, help me." He's talking to his dad, Bill. He wants his father there to help him, but there's nobody who's going to save him.
James tried to throw an uppercut from outside, and he was coming forward, and Evander's a pretty powerful man, and he hit him right on the chin.
Douglas goes down. As he lies there on his back, wiping the blood and looking at it, it's obvious he can either get up or make an effort to get up, and all he does is flop back down like the beached whale he is, and the fight, his career, and his momentary greatness are over.
people were stunned because what they saw only a little more than half a year before was one of the great fights ever. He won it. It was heroic. He was Rocky. And now he was a loser.
People liked him. People liked what he had done. People wanted to see him do it again. And then to see him disrespect the title like this, to disrespect the sport, it was almost unforgivable.
He disgraced himself. He embarrassed himself. It's over for him. Fade to black.
After the fight, Buster Douglas collected his $24 million and seemingly disappeared.
18 months later, I meet him in Florida. He's obese. He's probably 350 pounds easy. He's barely wearing his clothes. I just thought, oh my God, what have you done to yourself?
You know, it was just a lot of things, man. I mean, I'm missing my mom, losing the title. You know, the way it all came to an abrupt end. And I just basically took it out on myself.
He was trying to eat himself to death, gorging on food, drinking cognac. One day, we went to a deli, one of his delis, and it was closed. I thought the guy was going to cry.
I went down there and it broke my heart. You know, I just, all I wanted to do was help him, you know. Try to talk to him at that time and forget Evander Holyfield, forget all that stuff, man. He had nothing to be ashamed of, but he wasn't listening. He was killing himself because, you know, he was mad at himself.
On July 4th, 1994, back home in Columbus, Douglas nearly succeeded in killing himself. He slipped into a coma and was rushed into intensive care. He was 34 and on the brink of death.
I was just zonked out, man. No kind of life in me, really. The doctors came in and were looking at me and they were like shaking their head like, wow, I can't believe this.
And it took him almost dying to snap him out of it.
And I started realizing all the things that, you know, around me, you know, I love and wanted to be there for, you know, my kids and my wife, and just called John.
I dropped everything I was doing and got in my car and came to Columbus and started trying to get him back in life.
Mike Tyson returned to America. It was not just his record that was tarnished, so too was his future.
Well, it's a bad situation at the time, but I'll be okay. Buster Douglas fought a great fight, and I'll be champion again within 6 months.
After we lost to Buster Douglas, you said, okay, he'll learn his lesson kind of thing. But it really is a strange downhill spiral that began right about there.
Oh, I'm in a dream day after day. Beautiful women touching a ray. What can I say?
You could see that Mike was headed for a brick wall in his life. It was just a matter of when he was going to hit it, not if he was going to hit it. And he hit it in Indianapolis, and hard.
On February 10th, 1992, exactly 2 years after his stunning loss to Buster Douglas, Tyson was convicted of raping 18-year-old Desiree Washington.
Sitting at the defense table all by himself was Mike Tyson. Just sort of slumped over. And I remember thinking, here he is at probably the worst moment of his life, alone, which to me was typical of his whole life.
While Mike Tyson lost control of his life, Buster Douglas took control of his after surviving a diabetes-induced coma.
You know, it was a blessing to come out of that, you know, and I was able to turn my life back around.
On June 22nd, 1996, Buster Douglas re-entered the ring to battle Tony La Rosa and his own demons.
Here's a guy that I had to get ready to fight, Mike Tyson, the baddest guy in the world, and I turned around to check on him, and he looked at me and he went, oh, shit. You know, and I said, no, man, it's cool. You know, everything's fine. You're all right, man. You're in good shape.
Come to near death and then get back in the ring. I think I was more nervous going in that fight than any fight, ever.
Buster Douglas went on to win that fight, and before he retired, a handful more. But more importantly, he had regained his health and a lasting measure of self-respect.
Got his life back for him, you know. I'm more proud of that than beating Mike Tyson. I'm more proud of that.
Having served half of his 6-year prison term, Tyson was released in 1995. After regaining his title and that aura of invincibility, he signed to fight Evander Holyfield on November 9, 1996. The assumptions going into the fight were eerily reminiscent of his bout with Buster Douglas nearly 7 years before.
He wasn't the long shot that Buster Douglas was, but nobody gave Holyfield a chance coming into this fight.
But Holyfield entered the ring with the same attitude that had brought Buster Douglas victory in Tokyo.
The first punch of the first round sealed the deal. Tyson throws a big hook right into Holyfield. Holyfield takes one step back, shakes his head, says, "I'm not Michael Spinks," and comes right back at him. And from that moment on, Evander Holyfield dominated Mike Tyson.
Tyson, although he was a bully, could be bullied. And Holyfield had this knowledge, so in many ways he was ideal for this fight.
On June 28, 1997, Mike Tyson would get something he never got against Buster Douglas, a rematch. But instead of gaining redemption, Tyson harvested shame.
He lost the first fight to Holyfield, and for the first 2 rounds, he'd gotten the bejabbers beaten out of him. And he just figured, I can't win. There is no way I can win. Let me out of this.
I saw Holyfield jump up and jump around and said, he bit me. And then they got him back to the center of the ring and told him, let's get to it. And they got to it again. They bit him again. I think that was it. And then everything went south.
Fighting Holyfield created yet another chapter in his legend. People think, well, he's not good anymore, but he sure is crazy.
2 years later, in Columbus, Ohio, Buster Douglas made peace with his father. Dynamite was stricken with terminal cancer, and from his deathbed had reached out for help.
He just didn't have no strength, so he allowed me to carry him back into the bed, And he was laying there and we was talking. I said, all right, then, I'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, and then I got that call that night that he had passed. He was a true man, a warrior all the way to the end.
Retired from the ring and living on his estate in the sleepy Ohio countryside, Buster Douglas has finally found contentment.
He's a country gentleman living out the American dream with millions of dollars to his name. What could be better than that?
Yeah, he's fine. He's having fun. He's got beautiful kids, beautiful wife. He's smiling all the time.
I can truly say now that I am happy. My boys are raised, and, I'm just excited about that. And I look forward to life. Every day I wake up looking forward to life.
And when he chooses to, he can look in a corner of his home at the trophies of that night, February 10th, 1990, when he truly shook up the world.
James Buster Douglas, the new heavyweight champion of the world.
Buster Douglas was never that good before and never that good since. But on that one night in Tokyo, he was pretty near perfect.
Meanwhile, Mike Tyson still grimly pursues the title that Buster Douglas took from him so many years ago. Supported by boxing fans still mesmerized by his potential for violence.
Everybody knows to this day when Mike Tyson fights on TV, you got to be there second one because it's about to go down.
He's still Mike Tyson. You don't know what's going to happen, and that's always great.
People want to see a circus. People want to see a train wreck, and Mike Tyson represents that.
Can he become champion again? Absolutely. But remember something, Mike Tyson is not fighting for his place in history. Now he's fighting because A, he needs money. B, there's nothing else he can do.
Everywhere he's been, all the money he's made, all the championships, all of the women, all of the titles, the adulation, did he ever really get out of Brownsville? Could he? Did he want to?
If you follow his public career from the beginning, the most dominant individual thread is the thread of constant, relentless self-destruction.
I don't think the story ends well. I don't think it ends pretty. I don't think he can navigate what's left of his youth and get out alive.
Mike Tyson's troubled life seems as dangerously out of control as ever. In January of 2002, his second wife, alleging adultery, filed for divorce. Weeks later, at a Manhattan press conference announcing his much-anticipated fight with heavyweight champ Lennox Lewis, Tyson let his demons get the better of him yet again as he precipitated an ugly brawl. That spectacle was followed by an unhinged Tyson menacing the gathered crowd with a torrent of abusive remarks and lurid gestures. And then, January went from bad to worse, as rumors began to surface that Tyson may yet again face rape charges. As for Buster Douglas, well, long retired from the squared circle, he's gone Hollywood. Buster recently appeared on the silver screen as a detective in a low-budget film called Pluto's Plight. For ESPN Classics Battlelines, I'm Rich Eisen.